How do you know if you're choosing love or fear? How do you feel, good or bad? That has somehow led people to believe that happiness is spiritual. And because people believe that happiness comes from things, people, or events, that has led to believe that being materially abundant is spiritual. How did it go off the rails? How did we go so far off the rails? Is happiness actually a problem? Some spiritual teachers speak this way, as if you should just put up with whatever is going on and suffer it, and deny yourself happiness. But happiness is not a problem. Happiness is your natural state. It's your birthright, really. It could be said that happiness is integral to spirituality, but not object happiness. Not what I call object happiness, which is confusion, which is confusing things, people, or events for happiness or unhappiness. And this happiness lie, as I call it, is so deeply ingrained in our society. Practically nobody gets away without it. So we've been conditioned to believe that things, people, or events make us happy. And then, when we start to pursue that, some will say, that's the material world, that's not spiritual. You shouldn't want things and have things. But it's not true. It doesn't matter how rich you are or poor you are. Neither are related to how so-called spiritual you are. There does seem to be a correlation between when you're at peace with yourself, things may flow better interpersonally, but that doesn't mean you're going to be rich and abundant either, necessarily. We don't have control over the outside. We don't have control over what happens to us. We can respond to what happens to us. And if we respond from a place of love, then our experience of what happens to us will be better than if we respond from a place of fear or separation. So, what are the 5 biggest happiness mistakes people make? After years of working with people and helping them shift from a bad feeling state into a good one, so that they have access to clarity and wisdom, these are the most common mistakes I see people making when trying to be happy. Number 1 is that they believe the happiness lie. They believe that they need some person, thing, or event in order to be happy, or to be not unhappy. But you survived quite well. You got to whatever age you are right now without that person, thing, or event that you suddenly began thinking you needed. It's a case of mistaken source identity, when in the past you thought that a person, thing, or event brought you joy. But is there 1 ounce of joy in 2 tons of steel in a new car? Feeling that excitement, where is it? Where does it come from? The car? The steel? No. You. Every feeling, good or bad, comes from you. I encourage everyone to re-experience life anew from your actual experience of what is actually going on, not a thought about what is happening, such as, oh, that new car makes me so happy. This reveals truth and removes false knowledge and attachment, opening the door to recognizing your inherent freedom and joy. That inherent freedom and joy has no object. It needs no object. It's always there for you. You can rely on it, whereas you can't rely on the material world. It's constantly coming and going, starting and stopping. So putting your happiness into the unreliable material world will inevitably result in pain. And that doesn't matter whether it's a person, a thing, or an event. It will come and it will go because it's not eternal. The second biggest mistake people make trying to be happy is looking for a reason why they are unhappy. Like legs on a chair, the whys are actually reasons to suffer. They support the belief. Chairs only need 4 legs for support. But you can add endless whys, one on top of another, to support suffering. So beware. The whys are where the suffering lies. The automatic habit has been, as soon as you notice a bad feeling, to look around. Why? Why do I feel bad? And when you do that, you will notice, you will answer yourself. You will say, oh yes, today this and that and the other thing happened. Or I didn't sleep really well last night. Or I was the 4th child of 5. Or the 1st child of 3. Or when I was 2, my brother ran over my toe with his little red truck. Whatever reason you give will be the reason you suffer. Right then, right there. And if it's a reason from the past, as they all are, so-called past, there's nothing you can do about it, because it's past. And so you are hopeless and helplessly lost. Although it isn't true, because you're the only one telling yourself that story. You're the one binding yourself to that story, needlessly. And when you realize that, you can drop all stories. The third biggest mistake people make, trying to be happy, is blaming the outside for the why. Even if you were certain you discovered the single why, it is usually something outside of you. And anything outside of you is influenced by countless things, none of which are in your control. Even if you were able to effect some change, it will not be permanent, because the outside never not changes. Worse, if you did appear to have influence, then the belief that you can and must change the outside merely strengthens, further binding you to additional future attachment and suffering. The fourth reason or mistake that people make is putting their attention on what they don't want. I love Esther Hick's example of holding a flashlight on a spot of damaged wall and saying, "Do you see that spot? I don't want to see that spot. See that spot? I don't want to see that spot." It kind of points out the insanity of it. As we put our attention and our interest and our conversation on something we don't want, and we feel the effects of that, all the while saying we don't want it. As long as your attention is on it, even if you say with your lips, your tongue, your mouth, that you don't want to see it or feel it, that is what you are seeing or feeling. When I work with people and ask them what they want, 8 or 9 times out of 10, they state what they want in the negative. They state what they don't want. For example, I don't want her to yell at me. Now, telling people what you don't want will not get you what you do want. Telling yourself what you don't want will not get you what you do want. You don't go to a restaurant and tell them what you don't want. Imagine sitting there with the menu. Yeah, no, I don't want chicken. No. Don't want salmon. No. And the waiter will look at you and say, this would go a lot quicker if you told me what you do want. With your attention on what you don't want, or on what you do want in the negative, then that is what you're thinking, contemplating, knowing, experiencing, and feeling. It's insane. The fifth biggest happiness mistake people make is that they believe mind and thought feelings. But merely because you notice a bad thought and its accompanying feeling does not mean that the thought is actually true. Now, but the brain's job, the mind/brain's job, is to offer up thoughts as options to you. It's this massive database, and it churns them out, and it does a magnificent job of doing this, putting out about 40,000 thoughts a day. But you're not aware of them all. You don't believe them all. You don't grab onto them all. You don't put your interest in all of them, and you don't put your attention onto all of them. And so most of them harmlessly come and go, unnoticed. Except for the certain 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that you have a particular interest in. And they seem to come up more often. But that's primarily because you have an interest in them. And the brain doing its job so brilliantly, will offer up thoughts that you habitually put your interest in, that you habitually fire up with your power of attention. So it will say, how about this one? And it'll throw a thought out. And if you ignore it, it'll do another one. How about this one? And if you ignore it, it'll do, how about this one? And when you grab one, then you'll get more of the same. Oh yes, I'm interested in that one. And then the whys will start, and the blame will start. And you can go down that dark, dank rabbit hole, lost, believing the story in your mind. And it's completely imaginary. It's completely imaginary. Whatever you believe has happened or is happening to you or that someone did to you is all in your head. You don't know for certain that that's that other person's truth. What you are knowing is your fear or your hope. Usually it's your fear. And what is fear? Fear is a thought or a memory or even a smell or a taste from the past, which doesn't exist except as a memory stored in the brain. And when you access it, you're not accessing the past. You are right here and right now accessing the option to suffer. And when you worry about the future, what's that? That is a thought about the past, something you've seen or heard or done that you're afraid might happen again. And that fear of it happening again, which is in the future, is happening now. So the past is actually the future, and neither of them exist. All that exists in this moment is whatever you're experiencing in this moment, a thought, a feeling. And whatever you're experiencing in this moment as thought or feeling is what you have the most interest in. It's not because it happened to you in the past or that it might happen in the future. It's that you are most interested in it right here, right now. And that's where you're putting your power of attention. And that is completely optional. This is how pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional. It's optional because it's imaginary, it doesn't exist, and you're the one doing it. That may sound like bad news, but it's actually good news. Because imagine if somebody else could do it to you. Imagine if they could go in there and force your attention onto something you don't want. Force you to think something you really don't have any interest in. That would be hell. But that's not how it works. That's not what happens. And as long as you believe that somebody or something or some event caused you to feel this way, then you are lost. Because you are the power. You are the ultimate authority and ultimate power. And if you believe that, then that is what you will experience. Of course, it can't ultimately be true. It is not ultimately true. It comes back to you always. No matter what you come up with, you're the one saying it. Nobody else is saying it. Nobody else is in there, inside you, saying it for you. That's right. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Thank you, Christy. So, fear is a feeling. But you know, even fear itself is not a problem. I remember as a child, the first time I felt pain, I had hurt my hand. Ran it into the road, probably riding a bike. I don't remember what I was doing, but I remember the sensation. And I went to my mom, and I tried to explain it, and I didn't have words because I had never felt it before, consciously. And I tried to explain it, like heat and electricity. And my mom said, "Oh, that's pain." And I had not used the word pain before, but I knew that pain was not wanted, that people don't like pain. And before she said that, it was a multitude of sensations in my hand, constantly changing, moving, from tingling to burning. I didn't have these words then, but as soon as she said pain, however, I thrust my hand up her and screamed, "Oh, well, stop it!" Of course, she couldn't stop it. And that was my learning about pain. But the key thing here is that pain is just a sensation. Like any other sensation. But when we attribute the belief that it's bad, now we add a layer of suffering on top that we don't need to. Pain is a message. Physical pain is a message for you, for the body. And once it's taken care of, it stops. Mental emotional suffering works the same way. It's a message. And when it's taken care of, it stops. But the solution for bodily pain is a physical solution. We could call it an outside, meaning outside of the mind, but in the body solution. Whereas the solution to mental emotional pain is inside. It's the mind itself. But we have tried to run around the world healing our inner emotional pain with outer solutions. And it will never happen. Never happen. It'll keep you running like a mouse on a wheel, looking for the next solution, and the next solution, and the next solution, and the next solution. Because even if you get a momentary one, it's not enough because the inner pain is still there. And the reason that actually you have any kind of relief from an outer solution is only because you stop agitating yourself for a moment inside. And that is actually the sixth biggest happiness mistake people make, is that they want happiness. This is a bonus. Usually I give 5. Today I'm giving 6. Wanting happiness is painful. Wanting is painful. So if I had an object that you wanted and I wasn't giving it to you, you would agitate yourself inside. You'd think about it constantly. You would feel uncomfortable until you got it. And the moment you got it, you stop agitating yourself. Oh, what a relief. It's like if you were hammering your thumb, and then you stopped hammering. Oh, wouldn't that feel good? So you don't need a reason or a thing or a person or an event to be happy. Happiness is your natural state. When you stop agitating yourself, you will naturally be happy. It's like a glass of water. When you stir it and shake it, it rolls and it tosses and turns. But if you put it down and you let it be, it settles down into crystal clear stillness. Peaceful. Content. So it is in the very wanting that we suffer, and we also miss what is already always present to us, always available. So this may be as bad or worse than object happiness. Spiritual happiness. Once we've made the confusion that things make us happy, and that happiness means spiritual advancement, then we may seek spiritual happiness, spiritual peacefulness. We may take on a new identity. I'm a spiritual being. Yet that's still an I, a separate I who's something. And when you take on the spiritual belief that you now need to deny happiness, again, we're talking about object happiness, which is the one that the churches and religions tell you to shun. There's nothing wrong with having things. The error comes in mistaking things for feeling. And a bigger error comes in mistaking things for spirituality. If I'm a spiritual enough person, I'll be rewarded. And then I will acquire things that I want. And then I'll be happy. It's the other way around. When you be happy first, things take care of themselves. And when you're happy first, you have time for spirituality because you're not out there trying to acquire or manipulate or change the material world. When your focus is on the material that way in order to be happy, you miss the spiritual happiness that is already here for you. So it's a grave error to deny yourself objects of the world with the purpose of being a spiritual being. Because again, you're missing the source of joy. The source of joy doesn't need a material object. The source of joy doesn't need anything. It is a gift. It is your birthright. It cannot be taken from you. You can overlook it. You can overlook it in your wanting. You can overlook it in your pain. But it will never leave you. So if you just ignore or suppress a bad feeling, trying to be spiritual about it all, this does not result in detachment. It probably results in tiring yourself out, draining yourself, Perhaps you could become bitter. Perhaps you could lose faith, even. As the Buddha found, he found the middle way. He didn't find that he needed to deprive himself bodily or in any other way. He found a middle way. When the body is agitated, you can't be present. So take care of the body, take care of yourself, and seek the happiness and joy within that is always readily available. God does not want you to suffer or to live with unhappiness. You, from the day you were born, have had everything you need, right here, right now, every minute of your life, for this life, for happiness, for love, because you are love. It is only in the mistake we make about outer things, the mistake we make about inner joy, and the mistake we make about who and what we are. I like this comment here. Fear is an unconscious choice to be separate. Yes, or sometimes a conscious one. She continues, I want to see something that is not really there. I want to pretend and I want to forget that I pretended. Yes. It was funny. I wrote my first book, Alchemy, and I went back and read it some years later and saw this line, and I wondered, gee, who wrote that? It was somehow basically to the effect that I was tired of pretending to be something I was not, of the tiny being I was pretending to be. Yes, Christine. Yes, she says, that is true. I have everything you need always. Absolutely. Teddy says, well, God knows not of suffering. It's not that he doesn't want us to. That would make suffering real if he didn't want it, as if it was a possibility. It's not real, yet it can be experienced. Every experience is not real. Meaning, what is real doesn't change, doesn't come, doesn't go. It's eternal. Whereas every experience comes and goes. When have you ever known an experience to not come and go? To not stay? This is an impossibility. So no. Nobody wants anybody to suffer. Everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants happiness. Everybody shares that commonality. And even if it appears that someone is striking out at you, their intention is to feel good. Their purpose and intention, the origin of their actions is love. They may not be very skilled at going about getting it or giving it. And it may only be for themselves, the love or the happiness that they seek. But they do seek it. The more confused they are about the source and cause of happiness, the more apparently ugly their actions may be. So, back to happiness. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The confusion is sort of like this ancient Eastern story about a hunter who goes out with his dog for the day. And as they're walking on the trail, they scare a rabbit out of the bush. And smack! The rabbit runs right into a tree and dies. Hunter picks up the rabbit, heads home, and as he's enjoying rabbit stew that night, he contemplates the rabbit-killing tree. And he goes back to it the next day and sits by the tree, waiting for it to do its thing and kill another rabbit. You see, we know the end result. The end result is happiness. But we get confused as to what the cause and source was. When you stop agitating yourself, you resume and you return to your natural state. Peaceful, happy, love. But if that happens after something else happens, like a friend shows up and suddenly you're happy, you can mistake the happiness for your friend. But it's not your friend who's caused it. This becomes more and more obvious when you start living from within instead of living from without. When you start realizing where the happiness or the pain is, and that what was said or done by someone else is not what hurt you. Silence is the highest teaching. And sometimes just not touching a thought about needing anything or needing anyone. Just don't touch it. I found that we're capable. How do you not touch it? You put all your power of attention into your senses. When you notice what you're hearing, touching, tasting, feeling, seeing. When you notice the breath moving in and out. How silent that is. How much space there is. How peaceful that is. And how you don't have to touch a thought. The next time you feel frustrated or angry or something arises, just come to your senses like this. Feel your feet, the top of your head, take in your peripheral vision. Notice the breath moving in and out. And just don't touch the thought. And see what happens. Stay there as long as you need to, not touching the thought. Almost miraculous things can seem to happen when you do that. You find that you don't need to do anything. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to change anything. You find you're not unhappy. So there's nothing you need to do to be happy. One of my favorite quotes is by Muji, who quotes his teacher Papaji. And that's, you don't need a reason to be happy. You need a reason to be unhappy. Like a bad feeling thought. So yes, just don't touch. Be still. And notice the happiness that's already there. The peace that's already there. The joy that's already there. The freedom in not needing to do anything. The space. Coming to your senses, as I call it, is a form of meditation, and you can do it formally. When you're meditating formally, sitting on a cushion or a chair. But to carry it into your life, your everyday life, in everything that you do. Learn it on the cushion or learn it in the chair, learn it in the meditation, and then carry it through into your day as you take action. Because peace, love, and joy are not separate from doing, and doing does not block peace, love, and joy. Do what you need to do as you are aware of the senses. You don't need a thought to walk. You don't need to think left, right. You don't need a thought to do the dishes. You don't have to think, go around, go around, go around. See, there's very little that we need thought for. Very little. It is useful for setting appointments, catching buses or trains or planes, for differentiating John from Mary, for ordering what you want from the menu. But when you're not doing these kinds of linear things, it's not necessary. Thought is completely unnecessary and doesn't contribute a thing. People who've come to realize they are not their thought, they are not any thought, have the experience that thought is now a tool as opposed to being used apparently by thought. You now use thought. And so people who don't know they're not their thoughts live in their head as one thought after another. And it can be like a continuous stream of thinking that just never stops. Once you've realized who and what you are, the reverse happens. You are aware of the whole totality of your experience and only use thought for practical needs. So peace prevails, love prevails, joy prevails. I challenge you to go for 1 hour without engaging thinking. Go 1 hour being aware of the senses. And, you'll forget, and that's okay. Just come back and do that for 1 hour. Give yourself a marker. Say you're going to clean the house for 1 hour. So for 1 hour, as you clean the house, as you start and until you end, just stay in the senses. And when you fall back into thinking and you wake up out of that and you realize it, come back to the senses. Don't berate yourself. Just come back to the senses and continue doing what you're doing, aware of the totality of your experience, not just thought. And do that whenever you clean house. And then later you could do it when you're out on a walk. Instead of talking or thinking or listening to music, just walk, fully aware of all the senses simultaneously. Go out for a half an hour walk. Do it every day or every other day. Make it a habit. Pick these activities that you do which will enable you to stay in the senses. Sometimes people call this being mindful. Just stay in the senses. And then add another activity later so that you gradually build until you are doing it more than you're not doing it. And you are doing it in more and more activities throughout the day. And if you meditate, try this meditation. Do this instead of whatever else you used to do. To me, this is the only meditation that has any value. Any of the other guided meditations are using imagination, are using thought, are using the past, because thought is the past, primarily. And just feeding the thinking stream, which feeds the sensation of I. If you go for even 1 minute without a thought, That right there is proof that you are not thought. Because you didn't die. You're still there. So if you go 10 minutes without thinking, does it become more obvious for you? All of this coming and going comes in your presence, but you don't come and go. This is actual, not conceptual thinking about who you are. This is actual realization of who you are. And actual realization is the only thing of value. You can have a thought about who you are, but it's not who you are. As we say in NLP, the map is not the territory. And when you're out in the real world, the map is not the territory, and they don't have to coincide. In fact, they're largely different. So which do you want? Do you want a map, or do you want the truth? If you want the truth, then realize the stream of thinking which is stressful on the body and the mind. There's a reason it's stressful. It's because it's not who and what you are, and you're trying to use it to be who and what you are. And this is an impossibility. The mind and thought has a purpose. It has a practical application. And when you try and extend it beyond that, you burn it out. Because it can't know. It is limited. It's limited in the material world. It's limited in the in the experience of it. Whereas you're not, because you don't come and go. You're not an experience. You're that which knows experience. And you can know that anytime you widen your attention into the senses and open, open, open. Open more and open more and open more. See how far you can open. You can open so far that you lose your sense of self. The false self. You can't lose your true self. But you can lose the false self. It can drop away. And yet there you are. You've gone nowhere. And nothing stops you. Nothing's in your way. There's nothing you need to do. There's nowhere you need to go. There's nothing you need to learn. This is the cosmic joke. It's all very simple. It only appears complex when you try and sort the cosmos out using thought. Thought is a tiny aspect of the whole cosmos. And it thinks it can sort out. Sort it all out. It can encapsulate it all. It's like the tiny fish in the ocean thinking, I can encapsulate the ocean. It's the other way around. The ocean encapsulates you. But you are not the fish. It's a case of mistaken identity. You are the infinite ocean. You don't need anything. And when you're free from need, then you'll know you don't need anything. So free yourself. Free yourself from thought, from effort. Because your true self is effortless. All you have to do is be, and you can't not be. Just watch everything else come and go, knowing that it always comes and goes and it can't hurt you. Keep your attention open, not contracted down onto a bad feeling thought, but open. Pain is your guidance. When you're hurting, you're contracting. Use that knowing that you're hurting to open your attention into the senses. And there you will realize you don't need anything. You're okay. Right here, right now, you're okay. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. You can do that, and that will end the stream of thinking that you're a thought. And or you can use the stream of thinking to fold onto itself. When there's a really powerful stream of thinking that arises and says, I, something. I need this, I need that. I can't take this, I can't take that. When that arises, you can either radically and dramatically open your senses and don't touch the thought, or turn the eye on itself and ask yourself, who or what is this I? This is so important. This I that needs something is so agitated. So it's so important for this I. Well, okay, let's pay attention to this I. Let's find out who or what is that I. What is that phenomena you're experiencing, that you're knowing? Have a good close look. And even if it gets frustrated when you're having a good close look, if frustration arises, I'm frustrated, once again, who's the I? And don't give it up. Don't ever give it up to anything that the I throws out. Well, I can't do this. Well, I just think this is ridiculous. Well, I know who I am. Why should I do that? Who is that I? Whether it's an angry I or an indignant I or a self-righteous I, it's still an I. You know, if there's one root cause of unhappiness, it's this I. It's this I. So let this I come forward, as Mooji says, onto the witness stand. Every witness has to identify itself. Who are you? I had the direct seeing, the explosion, the direct seeing of realizing and seeing everything as myself. I never said we're all one. I never believed that. I couldn't honestly claim that to be true with integrity, because I didn't know that to be true. With integrity, I could not say it. It's okay, it's a nice idea, but it never satisfied. And I had no proof of it. After I had the proof of it, there was still this little matter of this I that now didn't arise with very much power, very much credibility, but it was arising. And so there's awakening, the direct experience of awakening. And then there's liberation and self-realization. With self-realization comes liberation. And liberation is liberation of what? Of who? Liberation is liberation of the mind. when the mind is freed to not try to be who you are. When it gives up the futile effort, when it realizes who and what it is and who and what it is not, then it takes its proper seat. Then, instead of trying to become the divine you are, it worships. It serves. It is a servant, but only when you know it's a servant and it's not who you are. So come to your senses and recognize thought for thought, feeling for feeling, knowing that none of them are you, not even your personality, because your thoughts, your personality, and your body is constantly changing, moment to moment. When you realize that in the search for yourself and you eliminate them, what is left? What is left is that which cannot be eliminated, that which does not come and does not go, that which is eternal, that which is so obvious that in the seeking of material things and object happiness is overlooked. Value that which cannot be touched, tasted, felt, seen, over that which can be touched, felt, tasted, seen. And it will become obvious to you because you will no longer overlook it. And you will no longer need a hope or a faith or a belief because you will have direct, indisputable, absolute, final knowing of who you are and who you're not. And then you'll know there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, that all the effort to go somewhere and become something went nowhere, but brought you back to this, where you never left. And you will laugh. And you may cry with gratitude. I wish everybody the same introspection, the same curiosity, the same throwing away of that which you have been interested in, because it has only blocked your view. Yes. Value the presence of God within and without. And when you do, you realize there is no within and without. Everything you see is you. Much love, blessings. Hope to see you or hear you or type with you next week. Enjoy the joy. Just because you can, you need no other reason. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Cheers.